I look like this, but was born here. So it's like, well, but what am I? She speaks Spanish. She looks different. She doesn't have the stereotypical blue eyes, blonde hair. I had curly hair, and I thought that my hair, should probably be better if it was straight. So I went through like a straightening phase. I felt like I was in my own bubble. But where do I belong? What am I? Why do I feel this way? I told myself, once I graduate high school, I'm leaving. There's no way I'm gonna stay here in Sioux Falls. I had always wanted to be a doctor. I looked up the process. What does a process consist of? And college is a must. I was looking at so many colleges, but financially, I was like, oof, this is gonna be hard. I have Augie, but I was like, there's no way I would go to Augie. Augie's so expensive. What can I do? Once you come to college, definitely got all these perspectives. There were definitely a lot of disagreements with people. It made me, I guess, question, should I believe this? Should I not believe this? A lot of the international students got together and we literally just sung all night. We were up till 4 a.m. There was lots of crying, lots of pictures being taken. All those memories are wow. College was the best time of my life, yet it was still one of the lower points of my life. I came here ready to do it, study all this, and then, all these life factors came into play and I wasn't able to be at my best. I was so focused on being that rabbit or the hare. Go, 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 go. Trying to do clubs, academics, 2 off-campus jobs, 1 on-campus job, responsibilities at church. At times, I guess, kind of forgot, hey, it's okay to breathe a little bit. I would definitely try to be more like the tortoise.
Hello, and welcome back to College, a show where we share the incredible transformations of international students who studied abroad at college in the US. Today's guest is from a small town of Brandon, South Dakota. Being the eldest child, first-generation American, and the first in her family to attend college, this person was faced with a lot of uncertainty throughout her high school years and particularly when choosing a college. Financial constraints played a big role in determining where this person would study. She wasn't even sure if it would be feasible. After graduating Augustana with a psychology major, this person is still on the way to fulfilling her childhood dream of becoming a doctor, waiting to commence med school. However, she has already got a lot of experience rubbing shoulders with the doctors and nurses at the Avera Hospital working as a translator for Spanish-speaking patients. I had a blast catching up with this person. Her positive energy is contagious, and I know someday she will make an amazing doctor based on the way that she cares for people, especially her friends. Okay, that's it. It's time to go back to college with Lincy. Lincy Smith, welcome back to college.
Thank you.
We're in the Madsen Center, which is where it all went down. You're a psychology major. As was I, and well, not this specific wing, but sort of out, I think it's the east section was more where all the psychology stuff was, and upstairs, but this is sort of the business building where the psychology happens and some government as well.
Madsen Center.
How does it feel to be back?
It feels good. Lots of memories, just kind of looking around. I can just kind of see myself I would study there. I would love to sit on that one seat right there. Sometimes when it would snow, I would like to sit right on the middle area. So Madsen Center was definitely one of my study spots for sure. So it feels good.
Yeah, and even sort of looking out that way upstairs, you can get a nice sort of overview of the green as well. And the sun, as I was setting up, sort of sets over that way too.
Yes, the sunset. Oh, that gives me memories of all the pictures that I have taken. Sunsets.
You like to take lots of pictures, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. This is kind of who I am. I love pictures, love memories. I like to look back and be like, that was a good time. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's ultimately what I love about the whole video stuff is that I get a chance to really document my life. And then especially now doing this Back to College podcast, it's exactly what I want to do, to share with other people, sort of the classmates who I actually went to school with, because I think you guys are the most incredible people that I've ever met.
Oh.
And I had the most amazing time here while I was at Augie.
Yeah.
So it just seems like it's a perfect combination for me to come back and sit down and have these conversations.
No, I think it's a great idea. You coming back and doing this in person, but also starting a whole podcast. Hey, I want to do a podcast, and you actually went for it.
I didn't think I'd ever consider myself someone as a host for a podcast. But then I guess 4 months ago I started this, and here we are now.
Yeah, and I think
In person back in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
At Augie. I think it's great. It's a great idea. I'm happy to be here. And I've seen and I've heard, well, seen and heard, because I know you have like video ones and also just like audio ones. And so it's been nice to look at those. Yeah.
100%. And you are from Sioux Falls yourself, and you have, both of your parents were from Honduras, but you were born here.
Yeah. So my family's from Honduras. Yeah, definitely a type of, I don't know if you want to call it identity crisis or identity issues. I don't know. But yeah, growing up, I grew up in this area. I grew up mostly in the Brandon area, so it's like 15 minutes away from here. And so going to college was a big deal. I was the first in my family to go to a traditional college, first generation American. Lots of things that I did not know and kind of had to figure out on my own. So it was definitely an experience there.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
So you said you maybe spent more time in Brandon then, as opposed to Sioux Falls.
Yeah, so I would say kindergarten to 8th grade, I was in Brandon, and then high school I did here in Sioux Falls. But Brandon is only like 15 minutes away, so I mean we would spend lots of time here in Sioux Falls anyways.
And this is the biggest city in the area with like a 4-hour driving radius, because I think Minneapolis is 4 hours away. Well, Nebraska's maybe 3 hours, so maybe it's a little bit closer. But
Right.
I mean, Omaha, I should say.
Yeah, Omaha. You got Fargo up north, 4
But
hours.
there's not much around.
We're literally in the middle.
So
Midwest.
what was it like growing up here then?
I would say there's lots of it was an experience. I'll put it that way. Growing up here, at home for many years, it was Spanish only. Culture wise, we had all these beliefs and all that, but then going to school, it was, not, I don't think anyone kind of looked like me. I was the only Hispanic at that time in Brandon, the only one that spoke Spanish. So I was definitely different than other folks. Got to experience, I wouldn't say I had a bad experience with like racial issues. But I know that's not the story for everyone. So I think growing up here was definitely a blessing. Growing up, I could kind of see more, like unintentional, I guess, racism, or kind of just unintentional, people that are just kind of unaware.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because we are in the middle of America.
Yeah.
And very remote place. So I think and I know personally a lot of people who are from this area don't really travel too much outside the surrounding states.
Right.
A lot haven't been on airplanes, so a lot of people, I would say, are somewhat sheltered to the wider world and different cultures.
Right. Yeah, no, it definitely, growing up was definitely, like, I would say, an experience. I felt like I was in my own bubble a lot of the times, and I didn't really have a lot of people to share my experiences with in school. Growing up, we went to church a lot, so church was a Spanish speaking church, so more people that spoke Spanish. And so going to school and seeing people that did not look like me, I thought that I had curly hair and I thought that my hair, should probably be better if it was straight. So I went through like a straightening phase. Um just kind of like, I don't know, just different types of things that kind of came up. And I growing up and reflecting, it's like, oh, hmm, I interesting. And then my my mom and dad, they ended up getting married when I was in middle school, and my dad is from Minneapolis. And so we definitely experienced a bit of a culture shock, I would say, in my own home.
Oh my
you know,
gosh. Yeah,
so,
totally.
because we went from speaking only Spanish, only Honduran food, to now, embracing another culture. And the things that I would hear about at school, like Super Bowl. I had no idea what Super Bowl was. I thought it was just like a football game once a year. I had no idea what it was. I
Isn't that
remember.
what it is?
Well, it is. Okay, let me rephrase that. That is very
But just
true.
maybe not as special and seriously taken as what it is, because it's
Well,
such a massive event here in the States.
right. Well, I guess let me rephrase that. I think it was more like I thought it was like one football game and like that was like it. Like there were no other football games, like maybe here and there. But what was Super Bowl? Why is everyone making this such a big deal?
Which, to be honest, I don't
Um,
even know now why they make such a
you
big deal
know,
of it, but it is massive sporting event, just the grand final of American football here.
right. So there was, things like that, foods, different types of foods, that, they served at school. And I mean, school food, is food. Thanks be to God, it's food, not going hungry, but the quality, I guess, for example, school's chili. Some people are a big fan, some people are not a big fan. I didn't mind it. I was like, oh, I'll eat it. It is what it is. That's the meal of the day. But then my dad introduced his chili to us, and I was like, whoa, this is good. This
That
is
was
good
better.
stuff. I was like, okay, all right. What else you got, Dad? Things like that. And so culture wise, he is a Black American. So he was able to kind of teach us, the importance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, lots of other events that I didn't consider, like I wasn't the only one, I guess, that was Hispanic, that was felt different. There are other cultures, other people that
Races
are
who
also
also feel kind of a little bit, maybe, I mean, they feel the pressures of society in one way or another as well. It's not just a certain race or type of people. It's sort of everyone has their own different struggles that they go through.
right, right. And so, growing up, I had all this like exposure, from his experiences, and then coming to Augie, it kind of made me like, oh, okay, like there are other people that look like me, maybe don't come from like the same background as me, but it was it was definitely good to experience. Growing up, like it's like had a bit of an identity crisis, I guess, because it's like, okay, I look like this, you know, but I'm was born here. So it's like, well, what am I? You
I
know what I
think straight
mean?
away that sort of makes it very difficult.
You're right, because people in Honduras, it's like, well, she was born in America, so she's
You must be American
she's
then.
American, only American. But then those that are here, it's like, well, she speaks Spanish, she looks different, she doesn't have the
She's not one of
stereotypical,
us.
like blue eyes, blonde hair, and so it's like, whoa, what am I? And I guess that's kind of where it's like, well, where do I belong? Like, what am I? Am I like, why
So,
do I feel this way?
so how did you cope with that then? Like, what was your strategy to navigate that?
I think one of my biggest things that like really I guess helped me with that was coming to Augie. Coming to Augie, well, growing up I was very, very shy. I was involved in school activities, but if you compare the Lincy freshman year at Augie compared to the senior year, like I don't think you would really recognize her because freshman year very quiet, very like okay, like hi, and slowly I'm kind of getting I got out of my shell.
I think it took me a little while to sort of kind of meet you because I
Right.
think you were a freshman when I was a junior. Is that correct? I
Yes.
think so. So 2
Mhm.
years difference, but I think I'd sort of seen you around, but I never really met you for the first maybe at least 6 months or so. It wasn't until
Right.
maybe like the spring of your freshman year where we started to actually talk to one another.
Right. Yeah. I coming here, I was friends with a lot of international students. Um and what kind of started that was I started going to the rendezvous. I would always see come to rendezvous Fridays at 4 p.m. I was like, but I work at 5 p.m., and so some days I would have Fridays off and I would go to them. And
Which
little by
the
little,
rendezvous, for anyone that doesn't know,
oh yeah.
every week uh, the IPO organizes for a student or a group of students to talk about their home country, and they
Mhm.
basically just present on it. And often there's also some food as well, some
Yeah.
local cuisine that people make. So it's always a nice event, and it's one that all the international students tend to gravitate towards. And
Mhm.
I kind of missed out the first couple of years because that was when basketball practice was on. Or actually, we'd have games on Friday night.
Oh.
So no for me. But it's a very nice place where all the international students can like come together as a bit of a community and share backgrounds from where each other have come from.
Right. Yeah. And so I remember the very first rendezvous that I went to was Morocco. I don't remember her name, but it was Morocco.
Was it Haja?
I want to say
Because
yes.
she's the only Moroccan that I
Right.
know.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
So it must have been her.
Yep. And so I went to that rendezvous and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I guess I've always been curious about other cultures but growing up in the Midwest, I didn't really have that exposure. The only exposure I got was people from like Mexico or El Salvador or other um other Latin American countries. So, here and there I would probably have a friend from like I want to say in high school I had a friend who was from Ethiopia. But other than that, I was pretty much
It's most South Dakotan locals.
yeah,
Yeah.
South Dakotan locals. And so coming up, I've always had that curiosity like I want to travel, I want to all this, which was a reason why I started taking French in high school. And so, I've always when I guess my dad calls it a travel bug. You have a travel bug, he says. And I
You
was
see,
like,
French is kind of an interesting one that you jump to. I
yeah,
guess you were just interested in exploring other cultures.
right. And that was like one of the other languages offered. I wasn't going to take Spanish in high school.
That would be
And,
cheating.
and I mean, yeah. And so, and German, I don't know. I just didn't
I took
seem
German in high school,
right.
but I don't
Yeah.
really remember much of it now.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think all languages are very cool, but something drew me to French. They say the language of love, and they're like, well, you speak Spanish and French are both Latin-based languages, so like it'd be easier for you to speak French. I was like, huh. So I started learning French and all that, um, and then coming to Augie, is where I would say I was able to experience going to another country in a way through a person. And I know it's a little biased because one person isn't,
Doesn't represent the whole
yeah.
country.
Right.
But I think in many ways I would say that they almost do, because for a lot of people who aren't exposed to other countries here, well, I mean, when I come here, when I was here at Augie, I
Mhm.
kind of represented Australia.
Right.
I'm sort of whatever I do becomes all Australians must
yes.
be like that.
Yes. I agree. So it was definitely funny when we had like I think Ethiopia is a big group that is here at Augie. So, and I had a lot of friends from Ethiopia. I guess I have because they're still my friends.
Yeah.
But have a lot of friends from Ethiopia, and so it was really funny to see like four different perspectives of someone from Ethiopia, and they would be like, "Well, that's not true, Lindsay. Don't listen to them. You know, this is what Ethiopia is like." So it was funny to see how like um, I could see Ethiopia through different lenses, but I had never gone to Ethiopia. And so it just hearing the experiences and the rendezvous from all these people made me like, wow, like, okay, like I want to go where they are from. I want to explore their country. And, we all had different types of views, different values, but the fact that we were still able to have a conversation, be able to learn about each other was like very like, wow, okay, like, all right.
That's an incredible experience, and I think that's a great perspective as well that you share as well. Just
Mhm.
seeing different countries through people, which
Mhm.
I think is really cool. And it seems like Augie was a bit of a saving grace for you because you're having identity crises at home, at school, at high
Right.
school, so it's very kind of difficult for you. So just talk to me, Lindsay, about that whole college process. Did you feel sort of the pressure to go to college? Because I know that's sort of a big thing in the US.
Right. So growing up, I had always wanted to be a doctor. That's still the goal. But I was like, okay, I looked up the process. What is it? What does the process consist of? And college is a must. You have to have a bachelor's degree. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm not really at a point financially to go to college, so might have to take some years off or something because it's a big deal. I also did not know what the college process was like. Um, Growing up here in South Dakota, I told myself once I graduate high school, I'm leaving. Like, there's no way I'm gonna stay here in Sioux Falls. And it's 2023, and I'm
You're still
still in
here.
Sioux
You've
Falls.
even graduated college and you're still here.
Yeah. So it's funny how life turns out, but I had no idea what FAFSA was. FAFSA is like help that you can get from the government if you're a U.S. citizen. And so, first time hearing about that, um,
Help in what kind of way?
financially. So, like, you can get grants. You can also get like private loans through the government, like at reduced rates compared to like a bank or something.
And that's for any citizen?
Hmm.
Okay.
Right. You have U.S. citizens. And so I remember they talked briefly about that in high school, and I had no idea what that was. Filling out the FAFSA for the first time because you have to have a whole bunch of your tax forms, you have to have your parents' tax forms.
That
I,
already sounds like a nightmare.
the And so I was like, and with me being like the firstborn, being the oldest, I, who did I go to for help?
You got to figure it
I
all out yourself.
Yeah, I had to. I had no choice. And so I definitely did a lot of like looking online, like how to file the FAFSA, and looking back, I'm like, wow, like if, I'm really proud of the way that I handled everything. I did seek help. Um, Financially, I was looking at, I was looking at so many colleges, but financially, I was like, oof, this is gonna be hard. I Thousands of dollars. Yeah, I don't have that.
So you really needed the FAFSA for that government financial support to be able to go to college.
Right. And the thing is, FAFSA. Um, Now that I think about it, not everyone qualifies for financial aid help because I think if your parents make a certain amount of money, then like you just don't qualify. So it's basically for those that definitely show that they need that financial assistance. Thanks be to God, I did qualify, so I didn't have to pay as much as I probably could have. So that was definitely a blessing. So back to the whole college process. me wanting to get out of um Sioux Falls, I was thinking Texas. I was thinking literally anywhere, California. Like I could just name off cities. I just wanted to go everywhere. And it came to the point where, people are like, "Oh, what about Augie or USF?" And growing up here in the Sioux Falls area, a lot of the elementary schools and a lot of the middle and high schools, they come here to Augie for a music camp. Not a music camp, for a what's it called? Solo contest. And so you basically prepare a solo and you have like professors, they'll like judge you, I guess, and they'll give you a score and kind of tips and here and there. And so I had been coming to Augie since like fourth grade, I want to say, every
Because
single
is
year.
it the violin that you play?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So I played the violin. I was also in choir. I was also in band. So I came to Augie quite a bit, I guess, because I mean, if I remember correctly, it was all like the same week. And so I had an idea what Augie was, and I knew it was a college, and that was it.
So where else were you kind of looking? Because you said that you want to get out of here. Well, I would assume maybe a good opportunity to do that is to study in a different state.
Right. And then, but looking at it financially, I was like, maybe it would be best for me to stay here. Just because I have my parents, my family here. And so I was like, I'll stick around. But I didn't come to that decision very easily. I had to first apply to colleges. I did have a rejection. I applied to Gustavus, and that's close to the Twin Cities. And
That's a very nice school. I think I've driven past it.
yeah, beautiful. Oh my goodness, very beautiful. And I got that rejection letter. I was like, okay, cool. And
Ouch.
so
Yeah, that would
more
kind of
and
hurt.
so more and more, it was like kind of like I had to like stick to here. And so I was like, okay, well, there's USF. I have Augie. But I was like, there's no way I would go to Augie. Augie's so expensive. And but anyways, I still applied, so I got the
It's
FAFSA out
free
of the
to
way.
apply.
Yep, free to apply. I
The FAFSA was approved.
FAFSA, I don't think I filled out the FAFSA until after I applied because I didn't know how the process really worked. So
Just winging it.
yeah. And so I remember Wade actually at that time, if I'm not mistaken, he wasn't really involved with the international program. He was like admissions for like general admissions. So I think he was going to local schools and he went to my high school and I filled out the information. I was like, "Oh, I'm interested in this, blah blah blah." He was like, "Oh, please apply." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I applied and then I filled out the FAFSA. I did all that. I also toured USF. And I don't know, between USF and Augie, I just kind of felt more drawn to Augie. I will say I did tour USF during like their fall break, so no one was on campus. So I don't
So you
know.
didn't get that energy from all the students walking around and in classrooms.
Right. So yeah, I could have.
But USF is our greatest rival. They're
Yeah.
literally 2 blocks up north.
That is very true.
And well, I mean, sort of sidetrack, but whenever we'd play them in the basketball, that was always the biggest game of the year
Yeah.
because we just hate the crap out of them, really.
Yeah. Even football.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Screw
That's they play
Cougar.
the key to the city
Yup.
game.
Yup. So I knew there was rivalry, and I was like, well,
But you were drawn to Augie.
but I was drawn to Augie. So I applied. I was accepted. I saw how much money they were going to give me, but unfortunately, I was like, "Ugh, I don't think this is gonna be a possibility. And so
Because you still have to have some money to
yeah,
put towards
you
it.
still have to, you have to pay your bill before like a certain date. And I was like, there's no way.
No way that will happen.
I didn't know how loans worked, like everything was so new to me. Just everything was so new. because I was the first in my family to go to a traditional college, so I was the first to experience it. And so I remember I sent an email to Wade because he was my like counselor, admissions counselor, and I was like, so is there any way you could help me out here? Like, could I apply for like scholarships or grants or like what can I do?
Help a brother out here, Wade. Come on. We're
Literally,
struggling.
literally. And so, thankfully he was able to help me with that. And I decided Augie was the route I was going to go.
So you almost didn't, I don't want to say you didn't have any choices, but by the end of it, it was kind of like, well, we just have to make this work.
mhm,
Augie's drawn my attention. It seems like a great place. So that's where we just started.
right. And what I also thought was very like unique about Augie was like I felt like they wanted me here. Like when I toured Augie, when I sent those emails, I just felt like, hey, like please come, like not because I didn't feel like, oh, give
We
us
want
your
your
money.
money.
Yeah.
Give us your money. Come to our school.
Literally. I felt it was more like, hey, like come, like, you have a dream, you know, we are here to help you with that next step. And so I was very thankful for that. And so I came and yeah.
There you go. That's such a crazy backstory to even just to get you here. Such a huge effort.
Yeah. And yeah, it was definitely like, okay, we're going to Augie. And at first, there was a big debate of like, should I move like on campus because my family is here in Sioux Falls? But culturally, I would say it was a little different. It was a bit hard to do that because in the Hispanic community, people tend to live, kids tend to live, or I guess children tend to live with their parents in their 20s. Like it's just culturally, until you get married or whatever, you end up moving or something. And so it was a big step for me just because so family oriented. And so,
And so despite being here in the US, you still carried a lot of those Honduran Hispanic values as well.
right, right. And so, um, my first semester, I ended up living at home, but I spent a lot of my time here. So I was like,
Oh, so you
okay,
didn't live in the dorms your freshman year?
until second
That's-
semester.
Okay.
Yup. Second semester was when I moved onto campus. And well,
Because don't you have to live on campus as freshmen? Isn't that a rule?
mm-mm.
Well, I mean, maybe not like an absolute rule, but I think it's
No. Well, another point now that I think about it that kind of helped my decision was the finances. Um, it was cheaper for me to live at home at that time.
right. Okay,
So
that makes sense.
I was like, well, gotta give, a part of me, I really did want to live on campus. I was like, oh, wow, like, I want the college experience. Ah.
So tell me this then, was that first semester that you were at home, was that better than when you moved into the dorms?
I would say I feel like I wouldn't have had the college experience that I had if I would have been at home in respect to the connections that I made. And so I don't know. I went home on the weekends, so I still had that home feeling.
That's so interesting because
Yeah.
someone who lives like in the town, well, you can just pop home for the weekend. It was 9 months every year before I would go home during the summer break.
Right.
So I didn't have that safety net
Right.
or just that excuse to go home or just that sort of support network as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet it was definitely difficult. Your first couple of months here.
So would you say that was good that you were able to go home for like every weekend?
Yeah. I was super involved with my church and everything, and so like my church was like 2 blocks away from here, and so my mom would bring me food here, like when we would have like prayer nights. She would bring me food, or if I was just not wanting to be here, I would go home. It was just kind of 15-minute drive. Let's go home. If I needed a hug from like mom or dad, it was just like, all right, let's go home. So it was definitely a blessing to have, because being friends with a lot of international students, um, I a lot of times I know people would say like, "Yo, like you're an adult now. Like, why are you going home?" Or they would also, or students would also say like, "Man, you are so lucky to have your parents here." Like, wow, what I would give to be able to go home. So it was like, oh man, I think growing up, you're like, oh, I can't wait to be an adult, blah, blah, blah. But then when you're actually an adult, it's like, man, I love my parents that much more.
So I think it's quite a different experience for me, and well, like I 100% love my parents. There's nothing about that. But while I
Yeah,
was here, I think I loved the fact that I didn't have to just go home. I'm sure it
right,
was very tough at some points, but
right,
I think I really enjoyed just having that independence and being able to maybe not rely on my parents and seek shelter with other people and just find things to do on the weekends and spend time with others.
right. And I think that's kind of right, like the main reason I seek resources for me to be able to move onto campus, because I was already spending a lot of my time here. All of my friends, literally all of my friends, lived on campus. So I spent a lot of time in Berg soccer. Berg soccer I spent a lot of my time there. I would come to school. Let's say my first class was at 8 a.m. I wouldn't be going home until like 11. And I had to come back the next day, 8 a.m. So I was already here. It was a lot of, I had to do a lot of planning in regards to food, um,
Why was
and
that?
all that, because I didn't have a meal plan.
Oh, you didn't have a meal plan.
No, I didn't have a meal plan. And so,
So
second
were you going
semester,
home? Was your mum doing some cooking of some Honduran food?
well, I mean, there was food at home,
Yeah,
but
because I
it
think
just didn't make sense for me, if my class ended at like, I don't know, 11:45, and then my next class was at 1. I just didn't feel like it was good for me to go back home and then come back and
yeah,
then go back home. I just, especially in the winter, I hate driving in the winter. Like that is just like, oh,
yeah,
oh,
not fun at all.
no. And so, especially like with the winter, just driving here and there, it just got to be a lot. And so, I moved on to campus sophomore year. No, my second semester, sorry. And that's when I think Lincy kind of peeked out of her
Well, so
shell.
that would have been when I met you
Hmm.
while you were on campus, because I don't think I really saw much of you before then.
Right. Yeah. No, I remember the cafeteria is where I met a lot of
That's where
people.
we met.
That is where we met.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I remember I became really good friends with Max. And then Max is like, "Oh, Zach is my twin brother."
Yeah, I
I was
remember
like,
that
"My twin
introduction.
brother?"
I was like, who's this girl who's from the US but she's also Honduran as well?
Right. Yeah, yeah. And so it was just like, okay, and then you two became my brothers, my big brothers.
The Australian brothers,
My
the
Australian
Twin
brothers.
Towers, they call
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. And then just there's little itty bitty Lindsay there. But yeah, and so
Well, actually, speaking about that,
yeah.
we used to take some photos every now and then of Max and I, and then you'd be in the middle.
Yeah.
I remember one of the Black Hills when we were ACE ambassadors, when we took a group of freshmen out to the Black Hills for their orientation.
Yes.
And I remember taking a photo out there.
Yeah. I think, yeah, there was two instances. I believe there's 3 pictures that we took there. One was like next to like a mountain or something, like the first stop that we did. Um, I don't remember where the
There's
other
one
one
at camp
was.
as well.
And then there was one on camp where it was both of you standing, and then there was like
A
a
log.
stand or a log, and I had to stand on top of it and you both were still taller than me. So I was like, ouch. Okay. So I'm definitely the little sister here. But yeah, yeah.
That was good fun. We always used to like doing things like that.
Yeah, definitely have lots of good memories with you and Max, and the Black Hills was just an incredible experience. Like
Did you do
just
that your freshman year or no? Because you're not
mm-mm.
technically an international student.
Yeah, no, I'm not an international student, so I know that trip was just for international
Yeah. But you got
students.
to do
And
it a
then
few years later as you were an ACE ambassador.
right, yep. So because I was going to all the rendezvous, because I was friends with so many international students, I think I had more friends that were international students than American students. um,
Which makes sense given all the backstory that you've just shared, having an identity crisis of
yeah,
who the hell am I?
literally.
I think it's fair to say that gravitating towards the international students helped you sort of fit in, and because a lot of us are like, well, where do we fit into all this?
Yeah. And I think I always had that sense of curiosity of just learning about other cultures and just learning about, um, just what's out there. I do remember now that I think about it, growing up, my Nana, my great grandmother, she had a church here of people that were from Nepal and Bhutan. And so she would take care of us, and there would be times where she would have to go to some person's house and they were from Nepal and they would have all this food. And they would be like, "Oh, this is goat." And I was like, "Oh,
You eat that?
okay. Like, all right, let's eat it.
Let's try it.
Let's try it." I was a little hesitant to try it. But I think I tried it before I knew that it was goat, and so I was like, "Well, it's too late
Well,
now."
I've tried it once,
Yeah.
so
So I think like that was like a big, like that kind of like also created that spark of like, okay, like what else is out there? You know what I mean? I want to get to know um all this like different types of culture, different types of foods. I think, everyone can bond over food. And so yeah, that's kind of um
what drew you to all
yeah,
the
the
international students?
international students.
Yeah. Did you study abroad at all while you were at Augie?
No,
No.
I was supposed to study abroad summer of 2020, but then I think we all know what happened 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was supposed to go to good old France.
Yeah.
Yup, and that didn't happen.
And so you haven't been able to get over there yet?
Mm-mm.
No, it's so sad.
It is, but we're still young. We're still young. We'll get over there eventually.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, and I think I had other opportunities to study abroad, but I was so focused on like a timeline, like okay, I'm gonna do um undergrad in 4 years. Right after, I'm gonna go to
Well,
med
exactly.
school.
Once you had that
and like,
drive to become a doctor, well, it's
mhm,
like, hey, we went to all the effort. Now we're here at college. Like, let's make this work.
right, and yeah, would I have loved to stick to that timeline and everything? Yeah, I probably would be in med school right now. Um, but life events took a different how do I put it?
Life took a different
Life
turn.
took a different turn, yes, for me. And so I definitely had to get rid of that timeline and kind of take it one step at a time. Kind of like to think about it as a tortoise in the hare. I was so focused on being that rabbit or the hare, and just go 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 go. When no, I am the tortoise. Kind of taking it slow, one step at a time. So.
But if you play the long game, you'll eventually get to where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
I think I get caught up as being the hare sometimes and just mad dashing for a certain goal, and then I work out later, do I even really want that? I feel like I was just doing it for the sake of doing it, but I think now I'd try and reflect a little bit more of what is it that I'm actually chasing.
Right.
So I can become a bit more like the tortoise and just take your time in getting there.
Right. Yeah. So I think I definitely had a lot of different opportunities to study abroad. But I had already planned, summer 2020, that's when I'm going to go.
Yeah.
That would have been in between my sophomore and junior year. And, COVID happened, and that just was a whole different thing. I look at my college experience before COVID, and then my college experience after COVID. It's like a complete 180. So different, in so many different ways.
I bet it probably wasn't half as good, I'm imagining.
It was just different, like it definitely took a toll on my mental health for sure. But also like the people, for example, like a lot of, you and Max were both graduated the same year of 2020.
Yeah.
And everyone had to just dip.
Disappear. Yeah.
I
think dip is a great word to describe it. Peace, we're out of here.
Literally, well, when you thought, okay, yeah, graduation comes, it's sad, true, but it's true, eventually everyone splits ways, and it's like, oh, okay, well, they'll be here till May, whatever. And it's like, nope, have to leave back to Australia tomorrow.
Yeah. In March.
In March.
Yeah.
And it's not one of those things where like you could travel, drive,
Yeah, everyone you get to your locations like you're
right.
set.
It's not like like a lot of international students were here in the States. No, they either had to go back home or, they had to figure something else
out. Or find some family members in the States or do something.
Right. And so it's like, well, all these connections that I've made, like this is it. Some people I didn't even get to say goodbye to in person. Thank goodness for technology for sure, but it's not the same, having someone here in person, like this to me is surreal.
I understand completely because I've come here to podcast when I could have easily just done it online.
Right.
And full transparency, it's so much easier on my end when I can just have my setup already done and then people can just log on with their webcam or whatever and just, I don't have to set that whole thing up, but I customize this every time I go to set up and sit down with someone. But I find it so much worthwhile to actually have that connection being face to face.
Right. Yeah. I totally agree with you. Having that face to face connection is way different than online. Like I said, this feels surreal. I've been seeing you since 2020.
Yeah.
I remember you were packing and you're like, oh, okay.
One day I'm putting this in my suitcase. Half of this stuff doesn't fit. So who wants this? Take this item. I've had this for 4 years, but I don't need it now.
Because I think like the week before, we were all like playing like Fortnite or something.
Yeah, we were just chilling because we had an extra week of spring break.
Yeah,
so we're having a great time.
Yeah, we were all just hanging out, a whole bunch of friends just playing Fortnite, having good food, and then like the next couple of days, it's like, all right, see ya. We have to go back home. It was like, what? And so it was definitely like a shock. And then coming back after COVID, we had to wear masks for what felt like forever. And it wasn't until my second semester, if I'm not mistaken, my second semester of my senior year. So it would have been 2022 when masks were like okay to not be worn. So all of my junior year, I had to wear a mask. And then it was just so interesting. There was a Zoom, but then we also had to like scan QR codes of where we sat. And like if the person next to you got COVID, then you had to like isolate yourself. It was just like, whoa, what is happening?
That's not the Augie that I remember.
No.
At all.
No.
And so actually, Lincy, you touched on mental health just before.
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe you wanted to share a little bit more about that.
Yeah. I think mental health is super, super important.
I think also, I know for myself, having done the psych degree, I think my mind's been opened up a little bit more of all the disorders that we can have.
Right.
And like how our brains are amazing things, but also the amount of dysfunction and how flawed they are in many different aspects is a very real thing.
Right. Yeah. No, mental health definitely was a big factor in my college years. I came here ready to just, do it, study all this. And then, all these life factors came into play, and I wasn't able to um, be at my best. College was the best time of my life, yet it was still one of the lower points of my life. Um, for lots of different reasons. But super thankful for the staff here at Augustana. And I also like that they also offered free services with Sioux Falls Psych. And so I was able to see a therapist there. But growing up culturally, mental health was like seen as a joke,
I think in many cultures it still
yeah.
is.
It's like, oh, I thought like growing up I got super anxious for a lot of different things, panic attacks, I would vomit, like it was a lot. And I thought it was normal. And so it wasn't, which is funny because I was a psych major. And so, it wasn't until I remember it was my sophomore year, I want to say. I don't remember what year I was in, but I remember it was a psych course in regards to, it was Dr. Jepson, and it was, I want to say, psychotherapy and counseling. It was the class where you watched a whole bunch of movies. Did you remember taking that?
I don't think I took that one, to be honest.
Okay, but
because I wasn't too much interested in the whole counseling thing.
Oh, okay.
I was more so just interested in learning how the brain works and all that sort of stuff. Like behavioral psych, abnormal psych, that sort of stuff.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, so there was a class with Dr. Jepson where we learned about the types of therapies and like all this types of stuff. And I think that was like, oh man, I could really benefit from this. And so I went to who did I go to? I don't remember who I went to specifically. I want to say a student success center, and they would always advertise free services to Sioux Falls Psych, and I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's like for the years before, no, yeah, I don't need this. That's not for me.
Literally,
but then hey, this free, like seeing a psychologist, this is actually pretty valuable.
Right. And so, in culture wise, I'd I guess accepted the fact that mental health was kind of like not a real thing. Like it was just people exaggerating. I was like, no, Lindsay, like stop. You're literally fine. You don't need to do all this stuff. And then like as the more that I learned, I was like, man, like I have a lot of stuff that I did not know I needed healing from. And so I use those services. And what I also really liked about Augie, in respect to like mental health, was the connection that you're able to have with the professors and the fact that the professors actually see you as human beings. They were super understanding. Like I could just name off a whole bunch, like Dr. Bay in the biology department, Dr. Cloth, like just so many more other professors, Dr. Boyens, like that could just like, wow, like I would tell them, hey, I'm going through this, and I would have to share, what's going on in my life. And they're super understanding. The dean, Mark Blackburn, Beth Elam, Billy in the Student Success Center, they were just super supportive. And I think that I hope Augie never loses that importance of mental health.
Like just the care that I think just a particular example professors towards students, I think is really amazing to see at this college.
Right.
And I think also wanted to before we started recording, we were going to hit on a little bit of your faith too, and I think this kind of the two tie together because I see Augustana as a Lutheran college, and there's no requirement to go to chapel or anything like that. But I think even just the values themselves, whether people are like whatever faith they have, I think the community, the Augustana community, really embodies the Lutheran Christian values, and I think the care towards students is one of those.
Yes. Yeah. Mental health was definitely something that the care services that Augie provided for mental health was super important and super valuable, and definitely I would say made my experience here at Augie that even better. And with that, I think faith does tie a lot to that. Coming here to Augie, I was like, okay, Christian base, like, all right, I came here, I guess, with the expectation that a lot of people were gonna have, that I was gonna find more people with my same beliefs, and I was like, oh, like Augie's a Lutheran school, like, okay, so I was like, oh, I'm going to be super involved with like chapel. I'm going to be super involved with all this faith things. And I wasn't.
You weren't?
I wasn't. I tried it out. They even I remember the chapel staff reached out to me because they wanted me to be a part of their like worship team or something. And I went to their events, but I just didn't feel like it was me. And so I went to this other event, Augie Worship Night, and I felt like that was where I guess could
just be yourself.
Be yourself. Yeah, be myself, kind of be able to worship, It was just I just felt more connected to God. With worship in like the way that they did worship. So it wasn't nothing against the way that like chapel did their worship, but it was just like I felt like Augie Worship Night, like the club, like that's where I like felt at home, I guess. And it was very interesting to be surrounded by people that were also worshiping God the same way that I worship God. And being friends with so many international students, everyone comes from different backgrounds. So, some people did not believe in God at all. Some people believe in several gods. And so, a lot of the times I would go to Augie Worship Night by myself because, I thought it was something that was more, I think faith is something that's very personal, very, like you. And so I was okay with going by myself, and eventually, they wanted me to be a part of their worship team as well.
Oh, there you go.
Because I remember someone greeted me and they were like, oh, like, do you go to a church? And I was like, yeah, like my parents are actually pastors. They're like, oh, really? Like, oh, okay, tell us more.
I didn't know your parents were pastors.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah, my parents were pastors. And so that was a whole another thing, like being surrounded with people that have similar views to you was like, okay, like I got to meet more people besides the people that I had already met. So I was like, wow,
yeah,
like
just another sort of
a
tribe.
whole world.
I think that's a great thing about the variety that Augie has too. Like you can meet people playing intramurals. You can go to the chess club. You could go to some like the writing center and connect with people there, or Augie Worship Night, and there's even more people.
Right. And I think moving onto campus, my second semester was when, what you talked about being the tortoise and the hare, right? I think that's when Lincy like started to peek her head out the shell, like, ooh. And started like actually like exploring. Like I remember I went to just so many different clubs. Like I was like, okay, like I just want to explore. Like, I'm very shy, yes, but I still want to do this. Like, I still want to go to this. And so that's how I found Augie Worship Night. That's
And
how
so,
I've,
so sorry, just to cut you off
yeah,
there.
no.
Do you want to just explain to me maybe what you would do at Augie Worship Night?
So Augie Worship Night basically was a club that I believe it was an hour Thursday nights at 8 p.m. And what that would consist of is first you would have like one or two worship songs, and then people would just, worship, and then someone would share, like one person would share their testimony or would bring a short message, and then we would end it with like one or two worship songs, and that was it.
Okay.
And sometimes we would collab with USF, and so when we had those collaborations, we would go to Sioux Falls Seminary, which I think is now the admission center.
It is, yeah, it's the Welcome Center.
Welcome Center, yep. So we would go there and we would worship together. And so it was very good. It was very good to be a part of that and be able to explore other organizations and clubs. Be able to start a club as well. So like that was, yeah, definitely added to my experience here at Augie.
Yeah. So, Lindsay, how do you think that your faith has grown over your time here at Augie?
I think it has definitely become more, it has solidified more. I guess that's the right word. I don't know what word to use.
Yeah, that works.
But coming in, you grow up with your parents' influence on you. But once you come to college, like, you're on your own. Like, you finally got that time to, if you don't want to stick to your parents' belief, like, that's kind of your time to, like, okay, I'm going to explore this. Or if you want to stick to those values, then you can do that too. It's really up to you. And so I came to Augie like, all right, like, I know what my parents taught me. Like, okay, I've gone to church, all this. But I went to a Hispanic church. And so coming to here to Augie, I didn't know any Hispanics here. And so Augie Worship Night was like a complete, also a different culture. And so learning new worship songs and all of that. But what helped with that was my church is actually a bilingual church. And so my dad preaches in English, and then my mom interprets to Spanish. And the worship, and I was part of the worship team at my church already. And so that was bilingual. So a lot of the songs that the worship team played, some of them I knew, some of them I didn't. But the ones that I knew, I was like, oh, wow. Like, I felt that even more, I felt that much more connected with people, with God. And over the 4 years at Augie, and it kind of goes back to a lot of, me being friends with a lot of international students, you definitely got to learn about different perspectives, not just when it comes to faith, but also like,
Just lifestyles and cultures.
Like why this is right, why this is wrong. Going to the cafeteria, you would sit down, talk about political systems, be like, oh, I'm going to be late for class, gotta leave. And then dinner time, you would be talking about economics, and then like the next day, same thing, you would repeat, and it would be with different people. And so over those 4 years, you definitely got all these perspectives. And I did question a lot of my beliefs, a lot of my values, and there were definitely a lot of disagreements with people. But I think what was key was that everyone respected each other. And I thought that was very like, okay, like, all right, like, I actually do have a voice. I think coming here to Augie, they tell you to be open-minded, do all of this. And I think I was open-minded. I was, able to hear everyone out. And I wasn't like, no, you are wrong. It was more like, huh, it was interesting to see your perspective.
Well, and I
This
think
is my perspective.
that's actually very powerful in solidifying your own beliefs, is looking at other people's values and them sharing them, and that dialogue helps you work out in your own mind, well, is this actually what I believe, or this person obviously believes this for whatever reason, so maybe
Right.
like they've come to that conclusion, or just that state where they're in their life that, hey, this is what I believe.
Right. Yeah, no.
And so I think that's a great way to like really just reflect on your own beliefs.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You know, you're not going to know what else is out there if you're always like, this is my beliefs, not changing, whatever. I'm not saying you have to change it. I'm just saying, like, it's at least nice to hear someone out. And I think I struggled with that a little bit at first because I was so like, no, this is what I believe, you know, and through all the connections that I made, I was like, huh, you know, I guess I never thought about that. And it made me, I guess, like question, like, should I believe this? Should I not believe this? And I think all these 4 years that really helped me in solidify that much more my beliefs.
And did you want to just describe maybe what those beliefs are?
Right.
Because we haven't really talked about that.
Yeah, I guess. So, my faith is, if we want to talk like denominational and all that, Pentecostal. And so a lot of people didn't know what that was. I would say that our church focuses more on not really being denominational, but we do also have like the baptism of the Holy Spirit. Like, so that includes like being able to speak in tongues, or like being, some people like call it like fainting or whatever. And so I grew up with that. And so a lot of people, when they would hear, you know, like, what is Pentecostal? And I would kind of like, oh, here is that. And a lot of people would like give me disgusting looks, or like, oh, okay. Like, kind of like awkward, like, oh, you know, so. And so there was that. And then, you know, I also found people that were like, oh, wow, that is interesting. Like, I want to know more. And then the same thing happened with them. You know, I would hear their beliefs and I was like, whoa, like that is interesting, like actually interesting. Like I didn't know that was a thing, you know? And so we definitely got to learn about that. So in conclusion, my beliefs are Pentecostal, but I don't really like to get caught up in the whole denominational whatever. I think that there's a Father, there's a Son, and there's a Holy Spirit, and we should just pick up our cross and follow Christ. And that's, I guess, kind of my nutshell of my beliefs. So
Beautiful.
yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
That's great. And Lincy, favorite question of mine and the podcast staple.
Okay, give it to me.
If you could give your experience at Augie a letter grade, what would it be?
Experience, letter grade. Oh. Well, I mean, it's done and over with. I think I would give it. Oh, tough question. I would give it a B, because I feel that, I mean, I think this applies to everyone. We all have our like, oh, I could have, should have, you know, but didn't.
Yeah.
And so I think that if I would have done things a little bit different from the start, I probably would have been more satisfied with my experience. But the experiences that I had are just incredible. Like, there's no price tag on that. You know, there is no, like, oh man, like that sucked. No, like I said, you know, Augie was probably like one of the best 4 years that I've had. And so definitely grateful for what I experienced, and I'm definitely looking forward to what's next, and grateful for all the connections, and, you know, everything happens for a reason. I think a big factor in my experience was COVID. So I feel like that's kind of what made the letter grade go a little down from an A
Yeah.
to a
Well,
B.
and like again, that's completely outside of everyone's control. So there's nothing you can really do about that.
Exactly. So it's like, well,
Yeah.
because my junior year, with masks on, like,
Yeah, I couldn't imagine that. But I think,
I'm sure my experience was way different than yours.
yeah.
I mean, you had to end it just like that.
But at least I got pretty much to the
Right.
end.
Exactly. And
Which,
then I did it.
and actually, well, tomorrow, Don Granoga has organized a little graduation ceremony just for me, which is the most
I'll
crazy
be
thing
there.
ever. But I get to walk. I finally get to do that after all these years, because since I had to go home before actually completing my degree, I didn't get to do the big US walk with the cap and gown and then throw our caps into the air.
Right.
So, and
That's so exciting.
now tomorrow I get to do that. And I think I was meeting a few of the staff today, and it's already in their calendar. So he's just sent this out to, I don't know how many people. So I don't know how many people are going to show up. But I've invited a few of my friends. So you're coming along to that.
Yeah.
Which will be, I don't know what to expect, but it should be a whole heap of fun.
No, I think it's so exciting, and I think it means a lot, and it kind of adds to like the whole thing. Like Augie actually cares about you as a person, and so like the fact that they're doing this for you, I think that just adds a lot more to how Augie is, and the values that they have, and that they really care about you.
100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Just the care that I felt coming back, and just the excitement that everyone's felt, is just on a whole nother level.
Oh,
it's
for
so
sure.
amazing to see.
Yeah.
And so, Lindsay, what are you up to nowadays? You're saying that you've been translating at the hospital for a couple of years.
Yeah, so after Augie, I decided to take some time off from school. And right now I'm currently an interpreter at one of the main hospitals here in Sioux Falls. And so I interpret there.
Which one? Avera. Or yeah, okay. What's the other one? I can't.
Sanford.
Sanford, of course.
Yeah.
The whole town is just about owned by Sanford, but the other half is owned by Avera.
Yeah. I feel like there's always gonna be rivalry. There's USF and Augie, Avera, Sanford. Like there's gonna be rivalry in some type of way.
It's wild. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm an interpreter for Avera. I love my job. I really do. And
you're saying that gives you lots of hands-on experience in the room watching doctors, which is what you eventually want to do. You kind of get that hands-on experience seeing what they do and how they operate, because you are there right next to them translating for them.
Yeah. During my time here at Augie, I worked at the Behavioral Health, which is a psychiatric hospital here in town. And so I worked there for 3 years. And so that kind of that made my interest even bigger in mental health in the psych world. And so I was like, okay, I want to continue working in the healthcare system. But the thing is, I went to work during the day because that job was night shift. And so I was like, okay, well, what is going to make me have that hands-on experience with patients, but at the same time, be able to be exposed and all of that. And I looked at jobs and interpreter. I was like, I've been interpreting for a long time now. Why not do it as a job? And so I did it, and I'm there, and I get to interpret for all specialties at the hospital. You got neurology, you got OBGYN, the list goes on. We visit inpatients, and it's definitely rewarding. You get to see, birth, life beginning. Unfortunately, you do also get to see the other spectrum, of end of life conversations and all of that. So it just really solidifies my goal of becoming a doctor. And so I'm super grateful for that.
And a big part of why you want to become a doctor is because you just have that care, and you think that it can make a huge impact on people's lives. And I mean, if you're having tough conversations like end of life and all of that, a lot of that is super important, and someone ultimately has to be doing it as well.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. I think my time at Augie really helped me solidify, like, do I actually want to be a doctor? um, Augie was just so good with like um academics, pushing yourself academically. It really helped me with my people skills. It helped me get out of my shell. It helped me with a lot of different things. And, having that job at the psych hospital, and it helped me really like, okay, because you can't really major. Like here in the United States, I know lots of different other places. It's different, but here in the United States, you're expected to do undergrad 4 years, med school 4 years, and then your residency. And I know other countries it can be like connected, like you can do like 6 years
Yeah.
or something
It's
like
a
that.
one program that
Mm-hmm.
encompasses the whole thing.
Right, but here it's a whole different thing. It's like, okay, well, what am I gonna major
So
in?
you'll have to go back to school then to become a doctor.
Yeah.
And when we say doctor, what exactly doctor do you mean?
So, it's a little early to decide, but I'm thinking either being a psychiatrist or an OBGYN. So, yeah.
What was that? We were talking about that the other day when we caught up.
Yeah. So, obstetrics and gynecology.
Yeah.
So, basically what that is you're a woman doctor, a doctor for women. So, you do all of like the female checkups, birth control, all of that, and then you also help on the labor side of things, so like C-sections, all that type of stuff. So that's a OBGYN.
Yeah. So you got a few different options on exactly what you can do, but you know that that's sort of the path that you want to take.
Yeah, sort of the path I want to take. Like I said, mental health is definitely really important to me, and I would love to, if I'm still here in Sioux Falls by then, or if I'm not, I know that I would love to contribute to making a difference alongside other people, and through medicine. And it's just amazing how much medicine is changing day to day, how much is being discovered, and so it's I'm definitely looking forward to being a part of that as well.
Yeah, I think it's very important career being a healthcare professional as a doctor. You really can create impact and change people's lives. So the best of luck with that.
Thank you.
And final question,
Yes.
Lindsay. If you could go back and change your college experience, what would you do differently?
I think
If
for
anything.
starters, I would try to live on campus from the beginning. From the beginning.
I think living on campus is the best thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I was on campus all my 4 years just because I just knew that being in the dorms, you're just surrounded by people.
Right.
So
Yeah.
even if you live off campus right next to the college, you still lose that interaction when you're cleaning your teeth at night or just going to the toilet. You just bump into people and just start up conversations and build relationships as well.
Oh man, yeah. My experiences with people, like, oh man, we'll have to make a whole nother podcast for that. Because I would have so many random interactions. Like there'd be times where we would go to McDonald's at like midnight, we would drive around town, or we would literally be in the FSC till like midnight just studying, or we would be in my dorm having karaoke nights, or we would have other nights where we would watch The Bachelor, and we would have roses. We would literally have like roses. Like it was, we went all out. We went all out. And so,
And that's the sort of fun that you can have living in that dorm community.
all the sorts of fun. My senior year, how the fall semester, a lot of international students go back home. We had like in Grand Scow, was it Grand Scow or Stavig? One of them too. A lot of the international students got together and we literally just sung all night. We were up till like 4 in the morning because some people's flights were at that time. And so that was, there's lots of crying, lots of pictures being taken, lots of karaoke time, people singing in their own language. And so it was just like, those are things that you can't really pay for that. You can't really, like, where else are you going to get that, if it's not in college? So it's definitely like all those memories are like, wow. Like looking back, I'm like, I love those experiences.
Those are the best moments that I found at college. Just those random times that you'd be hanging out with people, and just even people you didn't even know, but you just see them in the dorm, and just maybe it's a spontaneous trip to Walmart or the Wingstop or whatever it is.
Yeah, I know. Like I met like Max. I remember meeting you and Max at the cafeteria, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll see them. I'll see them around. And then I would study in the lobby of Berg, and Max would come home from work, and then he would be like, hi. And that's kind of where that started. I remember I met one of my other friends, Hannah, in the dorm brushing teeth. And like that's how we became really, really close friends. Like all these, like, I met Denise and all of them at the Element Center. So it's like you never know, like what a small, I don't know, like going to the cafeteria at 7 p.m., what impact that could make on you. And so, yeah. But going back to your question.
Yeah, what would you change?
What would I change? First of all, I would try to live in the dorms like the first semester. And then secondly, I think I would use those like my resources more, and speaking up more, being more vocal about myself, more transparent.
And well, just about the resources, what resources in particular?
So, like, mental health resources. I went to tutoring, but I probably could have done a lot more of that.
That's something I would change. I would have gone to the writing center a lot more, just, I don't know, the math hangouts or whatever else.
Writing center, that's another one where I used it here and there for like final papers, but I know my senior year, I used that a lot. Like my senior year, I feel like was one of my like golden years because like I wouldn't say I had it all figured out, but I was like, okay, COVID is done. I know a lot more people, like, okay, like I know Augie, I felt like I knew what college is all about now. And that's something that I wish I would have known going into freshman year. I wish I would have got a little bit more guidance in that. But yeah, other than those two things, I think I would probably gone to more of the Elman events.
You mean like the late night events?
Mm-hmm. I was so busy trying to do everything at once. Trying to do clubs, trying to organize all this stuff, academics. I had like 2 off-campus jobs. I had 1 on-campus job. I had all this stuff. I had my responsibilities at church. I had all this stuff that I had on me that I, at times, I guess, kind of forgot. Hey, it's okay to have fun. Like, it's okay to, breathe a little bit. And so I guess I would definitely try to be more like the tortoise.
Just hang out with people a bit more.
Prioritize my time better. I know I could have done I did do all of that, but I think it definitely could have been done differently, and it would have probably worked out better for me in so many different ways. Yeah.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I think those are like the 3 or 4 things.
A good list.
Thank you.
Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for coming back to college.
Thank you so much for having me.